Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving right into an absolutely incredible human story. It's a tale of survival, sheer willpower, and unbreakable family ties. We're going to follow the extraordinary journey of Maria and Giovanni Avasar, a couple from Bristol who got the absolute shock of a lifetime when they discovered they were expecting naturally conceived identical quadruplet girls. Now, you might remember this story catching a ton of headlines back in the day, but what actually went down behind closed doors is even more remarkable. Okay, let's dive into this by starting with these staggering odds. You actually have a significantly better chance of winning the lottery than having identical quadruplet girls without any fertility treatments. I mean, the odds are literally 1.3 million to 1. But as we're going to see, being a statistical miracle doesn't somehow exempt you from the harsh realities of nature. If anything, it actually amplifies them. Part 1. The medical reality of fragile beginning. Carrying 4 babies takes an immense, unthinkable toll on the human body, and Maria went into labor significantly early. The girls, Claudia, Georgia, Chiara, and Fabricia, were born premature at just 29 weeks. That's a full 11 weeks before a standard due date. To truly understand how fragile they were, just picture this difference. The average newborn weighs somewhere around 7.5 pounds. Georgia Engisar, who was actually considered the heavyweight of the 4 sisters, weighed a mere 2 pounds and 11 ounces of birth. They were incredibly tiny, their immune systems were practically non-existent, and most critically, their lungs were severely underdeveloped. This severe underdevelopment thrust them right into a perilous medical battle, leading to a really cruel medical paradox known as chronic lung disease. You see, to keep these tiny infants alive in that incredibly fragile hospital environment, doctors had to put them on breathing machines. However, the immense pressure and the concentrated oxygen from those very machines, the things saving their lives minute by minute, were simultaneously causing long-term damage to their fragile lung tissue. So, the crucial point is this cruel paradox led to an intense, daily emotional whiplash for the parents in the intensive care unit. Maria beautifully, yet tragically, summed it up perfectly. You look at these charming, sweet babies, and naturally you want to smile. But then reality sets in. Doctors start gently asking you about organizing a baptism, a stark, terrifying reminder that your baby might not even make it through the night. Compounding all of that fear was just a profound emotional strain and this terrible sense of detachment. The babies had to stay in the special care baby unit for months, but Maria and Giovanni had 2 older daughters waiting at home, Rosa and Carmen. Maria spoke about the agonizing experience of leaving the hospital every single night. Instead of bringing her babies home, she said it felt like she was just a visitor dropping in to see someone else's kids before returning to her own actual life. Part 2. The pressures of home. So after agonizing months of waiting, the babies finally gained enough weight and strength to be discharged. But bringing them home absolutely didn't mean the battle was over. It really just moved the front lines from the hospital ward right into their living room, introducing a completely new set of staggering logistical pressures. I want you to step into Maria and Giovanni's shoes for a second and ponder this. How do you fit a family of 8, 6 of whom are growing children, into a standard 3-bedroom semi-detached house? It is a spatial and financial nightmare. Giovanni worked as a cabinet maker, pouring literally all his energy into providing for them, while Maria faced the monumental day-to-day task of organizing the chaos at home. The logistical reality they had to construct was just wild. They had to completely reconfigure the bedrooms, stacking the older girls in bunk beds just to carve out room for 4 cribs. And transportation, they couldn't just grab a standard minivan. They had to custom source a massive 9-seater Cayman Blue vehicle. The sheer volume of work was so overwhelming that social services actually had to send a home helper twice a day just so Maria could survive the daily routine. And this brilliantly illustrates that the chaos wasn't just about space. The medical battle had definitely followed them home. Maria essentially had to become a full-time pharmacist. She managed a rigid daily schedule for 4 different babies, administering exact, precise doses of iron, folic acid, and chloride just to keep their damaged lungs functioning and their bodies growing. They even had to carry patient cards around with them because the babies were on such heavy steroid treatments. And you can imagine the personal toll of this routine was just monumental: isolation. Maria was completely trapped by the relentless demands of feeding, changing, and medicating 4 infants all at once. Taking them out by herself was entirely impossible. As she noted in this really heartbreaking quote, her only day out was literally walking to the ash bin to throw away endless piles of nappies. Part 3. Relapses and returning to the ward. Premature babies with chronic lung disease are incredibly vulnerable to common winter viruses. What we consider a standard cough or cold in a typical infant is a straight-up life-threatening emergency for babies with compromised lungs. And the speed at which things unraveled for the Avisars during their first winter was terrifying. Over a single weekend, the family experienced what you could call a winter relapse domino effect. Friday, Claudia gets a cough so severe she's hospitalized. By Saturday, Fabrizia is admitted. Come Sunday, Chiara has to return to the ward. And then Monday, Georgia follows. In just 4 days, Marita went from a chaotic, full house right back to a devastatingly empty one. And it was during this period that the family faced their absolute darkest moment. Claudia fell incredibly sick, and for 3 agonizing weeks, doctors couldn't figure out exactly what was happening to her. Giovanni and Maria sat helplessly by her bed. They later confessed that it was a truly terrible moment where they looked at each other, genuinely believing they were going to lose their daughter. Part 4. Developmental delays, the invisible scars. Now, Claudia miraculously pulled through, but surviving infancy was really just the first phase of their journey. As the girls grew, the family had to confront the chronic health complications of premature birth. The challenges shifted from acute, immediate survival to long-term developmental hurdles. It's a stark reminder that early trauma leaves a lasting imprint. Their physician, Dr. Hugh Thomas, pointed out the intense psychological burden this places on parents. Because preterm infants are highly prone to varying degrees of brain damage, either before or right after birth, it's nearly impossible to predict the exact difficulties an individual child is going to face. The parents are forced to navigate this entirely unpredictable future, just waiting for symptoms to reveal themselves. Now, what's really interesting about all of this is the incredible divergence between genetically identical children. Despite sharing the exact same DNA, their early trauma impacted them in totally different ways. Chiara emerged as the energetic, dominant leader of the pack. Meanwhile, Georgia, who you'll remember was actually the heaviest at birth, became passive, struggled to even sit up unaided, and required highly specialized physical therapy just to learn basic play skills. And we saw a very similar contrast with the other 2 girls. Claudia survived her near-death illness, but was left lagging behind, struggling with the motor strength to simply hold her head up. Fabrizia was making general progress, sure, but found it incredibly difficult to crawl or stand. This forced Maria to perform an almost impossible balancing act, trying to provide dedicated, specialized attention to the lagging babies while simultaneously managing the relentless, everyday needs of 6 children in total. Part 5. Incredible resilience and triumphs. But despite the terrifying hospitalizations, the severe developmental uncertainties, and the purely exhausting daily grind, this is ultimately a story of incredible resilience. The sheer willpower of Giovanni and Maria pushed their family through the darkest times and allowed them to finally carve out moments of deep, genuine joy. Slowly but surely, they began to find normalcy. They got to experience those beautiful, hard-won milestones that make every sleepless, terrifying night worth it. They celebrated first birthdays. They watched them take their first wobbly steps and grow their first teeth. And they achieved the ultimate triumph, successfully packing all 6 daughters into that giant 9-seater car for a wonderfully chaotic, complete family outing. Throughout this entire ordeal, Maria's extraordinary stoicism just shines through. When reflecting on everything they had endured, she simply said, "It just seems so normal to me. It was supposed to happen, and it has, and I've just coped with it." There's absolutely no bitterness there. It's just a radical, absolute acceptance of her uniquely challenging life. Which leaves us with this final thought for today's explainer. When the cameras leave and the novelty of a 1.3 million to 1 medical miracle fades from the headlines, what does it really take to sustain those lives? Well, it takes an invisible, grueling, lifelong devotion. It takes parents willing to completely sacrifice their own normalcy to build a new one from scratch. Think about the quiet, uncelebrated strength it takes to raise a miracle every single day.